Meeting adjourned.
All right, welcome everyone to a meeting of the Economic Development Committee for Tuesday, December the 12th, 2023. Ms. Lobeck, would you please take roll?
Chair Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Brost, Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Fleischer, Councilmember Garitano,
Present.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
All right, thank you. And I do believe we have a quorum, so we will move along then to approval of minutes from the October 10th, 2023 meeting. First of all, are there any questions regarding the minutes from that meeting? Councilmember Marshall.
I think so, but we'll have to ask Councilmember Garantano. Showed he was absent for the meeting, but showed that he made the motion to adjourn the meeting.
So he's present and absent.
I joined late, so probably not at the very.
Oh, okay. It's in both
Because I
places.
did
It's in
that,
both places, yeah.
That's fine. Never
We'd
mind.
like to, we can make that correction to clarify and then approve it based off that clarification being added.
That's fine. We're taking one off the other, either leave them on or leave them off, but I just thought it was confusing.
So Councilmember Garitano, that's a pretty nice move that you can make where you can be both absent but present.
When you do
It's
that, you should
magical.
vote. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Marshall, second by Councilmember Dodwell. Any discussion further? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Abstentions? Minutes approved. Thank you very much. Next, we move along to public comment. Public comment or no? Okay. Do we have any public comment waiting online?
Mr. Chair, we have no other attendees, so.
All right, so then we move along to discussion items. First is for information update on business changes and other business news. And for that, I believe we turn things over to City Administrator Lee.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. We got quite a few to go through here and hoping that we can have some discussion on a couple items, but we'll go ahead and knock some of these off. Houston Bank located at 2675 West Glen Farms Drive will be opening hopefully here in January of 2024. Neil Kababi owned a non-physical bank called Spirit Bank, which was owned by Houston Bank. So sorry for the word dissociation here, but they went ahead and purchased the property where the Simmons Bank building is. Currently, it's being leased out by an Edwards Jones facility that should be moving out eventually, and they'll be taking over the full area. The department is currently working with Mr. Kababi to potentially put some appropriate signage at the entrance and exit of that facility right there off Village Plaza Drive. You're not supposed to be making left turns into there. And unfortunately, there is not a big sign that says no left turn. So some individuals have tried to make that turn and have clipped the bumper. So that's one item. That's a big one because they do specialize in small business loans. So going to be a great addition to our business community. Another really cool update here, Alloy Personal Training will be opening at 16739 at Main Street, which we're getting pretty full over there on the main building over here. So good to see that. They plan to open here by the end of the year. We'll be coordinating with them to have a ribbon cutting ceremony of some sort within the next month or so. This is one of the items that we might want to discuss at further length. It's very preliminary, but wanted to give you an update. The Department of Administration and Department of Planning met with Scannell Properties to discuss the large industrial property located at 323 North Etherton Road. Scannell Properties has a client, Performance Food Group, who is potentially interested in developing that property into something that would be similar to the North Point development. At this time, it's just been a preliminary meeting. There's no serious conceptions, but it may be a good time to start talking about what we want that property to look like in the future, just because there has been some interest shown. There's another item to it. There's another item located with that property as well, but it was more so like a laboratory testing type facility it didn't seem to work out, so they moved on. So just, we have been getting some interest. We might want to discuss that property a little bit more at length. Another really exciting update, the Village Plaza Shopping Center, previously owned by Gershman Real Estate, has been bought out by Reethy Realty. And they are actually working with the department right now. We've reached out to the Missouri Department of Transportation to hopefully clean up the brush on the side of the road of Highway 100 to help with visibility to the center as a whole. This actually corresponds to the discussions I've had with business owners in that plaza. They have stated that the visibility from Highway 100 has been a little bit troublesome. Tied in with Houston Bank having the monument sign out front, not having it belong to that plaza specifically, makes it a little bit more difficult to get that exposure. So hopefully MoDOT, they've come back and said that, you know, they're currently looking at it, but right now it might be something where the new plaza owner has to pay for it. So we're going to try to leverage as much as we can to help them out there. But overall, it's owned by a new company. They plan on going in and they're looking to fill it very quickly. So they got some cool ideas there. And hopefully we start seeing that fill up too, because that shopping center, just as a reminder, does have our highest vacancy rate in the city. So you can kind of look at different areas. That one is probably the most troublesome. And just overall, the feedback is visibility is a little tough right there, even though you do have that good Highway 100 traffic coming by. The other item here, the old Jack in the Box site located at 16590 Manchester Road. This is an interesting topic of discussion as well. We are waiting to hear back from the developer, but there was initially a DZRC meeting regarding a 4-story mixed-use development with retail located on the first floor. It would be a minimal site with about 30 apartment units, not being super large apartments, and then 4 retail units. At this time, the DCRC did meet to discuss. They should be discussing after some action items are taken by the developer. At this time, we have not heard that those action items were taken. Just kind of highlight a couple of those items. One was meeting with the DESCO group to discuss how this property would affect the Schnucks. Another was just a rough sketch of what this development would look like and the location of it. So nothing too crazy, but something that shows where the frontage would be and how many parking spots. Really, that gets into the third part. What is the parking situation? Can they utilize parking with the DESCO group's property there with the Schnucks? So that's one that we might want to discuss too, if you want to pencil that one. Cool update here on St. Croix Hospice LLC. They did open for administrative purposes earlier in the year, but they reached out to the city not too long ago to let us know that the state got back with them with their board licensing. So now they can officially take patients in that area. So patients can now visit them. They don't just have to use it as an administrative building. So great news there. They said now they would be interested in talking about a ribbon cutting ceremony. So that might be on the docket here soon. And that's at the same location at 16759 Main Street, Suite 208, over there where Alloy Personal Training is, but it's on the second floor. Another interesting development, not too much with actual business, but it would provide more households in town center and would drive, hopefully a little bit more economic activity. The mayor, Department of Administration, and Department of Planning met with Nadesco, Bob Walter, and Steve Brown back in November regarding the property located at 16701 Manchester Road. It's right there behind the church and the Deerbergs. That property would be potentially turned into tasteful townhomes. And at this time, that's kind of where it's been left, but we'll see where that goes. That could add additional homes and hopefully drive some more economic activity. Say one more here, just a quick shout out to Magnolia Soap and Bath Company. They made some really cool soap bars for our new resident packets that have the Wildwood logo and a nice little sticker. They just opened on December 1st, so good for them. Just want to give them a quick congratulations. We'll be doing a ribbon cutting ceremony with them too, so make sure your calendars are clear in January. The last one here is just JB Wellness Cafe. They look to open at 16962 Manchester Road, where the Fantastic Cakes and where to buy them was formerly located. So Fantastic Cakes actually moved out to O'Fallon. So JB Wellness will be taking over that spot right next to the SSM Health Physical Therapy. So really like what Mr. Petruso is doing over there. He's kind of turning it into a health and wellness area. And he's kind of his vision for the sector of the city. So super excited about that. It's just, you can kind of feel that vibe when you go over there that, here's a good place to get healthy, one-stop shop. So department's available for any questions.
All right, so we will open it up for questions, starting with Councilmember Dodwell, who has a question for you.
I just real quickly on the Jack in the Box potential proposal, that 4-story building in that corner, is that gonna, is that plausible with our building standards? I just don't know if that's.
Yes, so they would tear down if they say, you know, there's a lot of from here till then, till the
Yeah.
shovel hit, but they would tear down the existing structure. And this is, I'm glad you asked that, just because I can give a little additional feedback from individuals that have looked at the site before that structure was, you know, even decided like could potentially be torn down or something like that, but a lot of individuals think there's just, it's beyond damage. There's a water
Yeah.
main break at the bottom of it. That's just a little bit tough to, it's gonna cost some money to fix. So some individuals see it might be the cheaper option to replace it, but I can refer to our Department of Planning here, who happens to be here tonight, but I would say from the looks of what they were presenting, it would be fronting Manchester Road, right along that little turn as you're going up. It does seem feasible. It would be kind of the question of 3 versus 4 stories, I would probably say would be more the dominating factor. And then obviously the parking being appropriate for the number of individuals utilizing the space. But I can defer to our Director of Planning, Mr. Vunich, if you have anything else to add, or if I hit that one, that's okay.
Get it out of the park.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich.
So if I might, on this same topic, I think you and I discussed Desco Group and conversations with Desco Group and their receptiveness to this project. Where do we stand with those conversations?
So we had instructed per the DCRC meeting, there was instructions given to the developer to reach out to the Desco Group. At this time, we have not heard back if that meeting has taken place. So we have encouraged them, because at the end of the day, the Desco Group, there's 2 sides to this coin. One side, on the negative side of adding it, you could see the Schnucks Plaza lose a little bit of visibility on that frontage with that tall of a building. On the other side of that, though, you have now, if you build this, you've created kind of a little self-sustaining ecosystem, if you will, of 30 units of upscale apartments that would most likely walk over to Schnucks instead of hopping in a car and driving to the grocery store if they have one right there. So they would get an influx of customers that are there more frequently, but they could lose that frontage. But I think it is kind of counterbalanced with the fact that you have monument signing throughout that corridor of Manchester, which does help the Schnucks Plaza out specifically. So that would be probably the biggest concern, but obviously it's something that if the Desco Group is just adamantly against it, it's going to make it a lot more difficult for a proposal like this to move through.
And I think we had discussed that possibly rather than 4 stories, that we're getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit, but possibly rather than 4 stories, maybe 3, but expanded out a little bit.
Yeah.
So that there wouldn't be quite the blockage of the Schnucks.
Yes, and personally, I think that would probably be, you know, I can't speak for the developer, but I would say that would probably be the more attainable and more realistic looking property, just based off. If you look at the general architecture over there and just the structure of the buildings in that area, you know, a 3-story building will mix well with the medical office that's across the street, whereas a 4-story, it's gonna kind of pop out and stick out a little bit further. That being said, the site is limited in size, so there could be, you know, depending on crunching the numbers of how many units they have to squeeze in there to make it make sense, that might be the determining factor here, whether how far they can stretch it out.
And who's the owner of that property?
The owner currently?
Yeah.
Gorgian Acquisitions, a
Okay.
firm, it's an investment firm up in New York. They're out of
Okay. That's right.
So they're looking to sell, and there was real interest shown from this developer, so we'll see where it goes. We've reached out times after that meeting. It seems like maybe they're working on a couple of the items for coming back, so we'll give an update once we hear more.
I think Councilmember Bartoni had a question for you.
Well, and you kind of hit on it. I was just
Okay.
kind of more curious as to, did we take Schnucks's temperature on this about 4-story building being in front of theirs? Because if you're coming from this direction, there's not a lot of visibility to begin with. If you're coming up the other way, there's a lot of visibility, but just more like, that's a big building to put in front of your business.
Yeah, and I think the DCRC recognized that, and you know, thing is, you know, you hope that developers have reached out to corresponding neighbors, but it seems like sometimes, a lot of times it goes straight to the city. So after finding out that they had not spoken with the Desco Group, we said, hey, that, you know, having them even talk to them, if you get their support, bring them to a meeting. If they speak in support of it, that's just gonna compile a, a good thing there. So I mean, that's kind of where we're waiting is what is the receptiveness of having something like this?
Councilmember Garitano?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to comment because I wasn't at the Development and Zoning Review meeting for that proposal, but you may recall a while back, there was a proposal for a multi-story building on the other side of Manchester, 16701 Manchester Road, which is across from the Enclaves. I believe that was 4 stories or more. That was concern for those residents in the Enclaves because the Enclaves adjacent there, you have $1 million plus homes. Those were homes built. It's called Cody Manors, the road, and Colby Manors is on the other side. Those were built by Wesley Byrne. So I think those folks would probably be the ones that are gonna be very opinionated about what goes next to them and whether they're gonna be looking at a 4-story building or a 3-story building. I mean, the feedback was very strong when there was a proposal across from the Enclaves where these homes faced. So I think that's something to just keep in mind. I would definitely, and I'm gonna assume that this has probably already been asked, but it would be good to see what kind of rendering they could produce that can provide a visual to how that would look. Because that whole frontage, that whole area, I think there was some modifications to the signage there where the Schnucks is. Not too long ago, could be a couple of years ago, but I think there was some changes because Puppingham Palace added their name and a couple of other businesses. So with that change, maybe a more modern signage would go there, which would address some of those businesses. The other question I have is related to there. I have not heard of anything or any movement related to the former Electro Savings Bank, which is on that same area there. Anything happening with that?
Unfortunately, with your permission, Chair.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Councilmember Garitano, there is nothing to report on that property. They are still letting visitations occur, but there has just absolutely been no traction on that property specifically.
Councilmember Dodwell, and then
That's okay.
And Councilmember Marshall.
My question is on the one down in the Valley Performance Food Group. I spent quite a few years in that business. That's food distribution. Those are double trailers. And will there be restrictions then on pulling a set of double or triple trailers down 109 to get to 44?
Yes, so in this case, this is way before, this hasn't even gone to DCRC or anything like that.
I just know that's their business.
Yeah, it would be, and it is distribution.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's still working out of that.
it's a very large distribution chain.
and it's 24 hours a day.
Yes, and in this case, I mean, the infrastructure down on Etherton right there, I mean, there would need to almost be a comprehensive plan to update that infrastructure to be able to withstand, not just, and that's why I actually brought this up, just to kind of get the
Yeah.
talking point out there, but we have it zoned as industrial, but if we were to have something even like the North Point that was proposed originally, if anything like that were to actually go in there, we would have a massive strain on the infrastructure that's surrounding the area. So you bring up the excellent point that I'm hoping to get across is that we might want to start looking at that area if we're going to kind of promote it to, what would be needed to fix it, to make sure it could withstand that.
So I ran the distribution center in Westport and we pulled 12 sets of doubles out of there every night after 10 o'clock at night, Kansas City, Memphis, those areas. And even then the drivers complained about Westport. So 109 would be a challenge. They're all trying to get to 44. You want to get to 70 and 44. So I just think as they get in there, that will be they are a big company though. You're right, they.
Especially when we put the roundabout up at 100 or up on
Yeah,
109 and Wild Horse.
The traffic, a lot of it would be at night, but it's still a daytime. You'd have all kinds of tractor trailers in and out of there.
Well, the traffic, yeah, and that's just putting a lot of strain on the existing infrastructure. It's just, those streets are very narrow and, honestly, when you look down Etherton, it could very well use a review and just in general of, those sharp corners that you're turning down there. So it's,
Do we own Etherton? That's the county.
so it would be, that's,
Yeah.
and then you got
uh-huh.
Chesterfield, you
Yeah.
got Chesterfield on one.
State.
Old State's twin.
Yeah.
It's
uh-huh,
North Old City.
Yeah. it's northwest.
Councilmember Garitano.
I was just gonna say on that point, I remember some preliminary conversations, or at least I heard about that North Point would, if that plan would have moved forward, I think they would not have considered trucks heading on Hitterton up to 109. I
No.
think it was strictly a highway.
And then you'd have the
64
employees, but that's still 1,000 or so jobs. But their business is very different than what the other North Point was gonna be. So I mean, it's all mass warehouse, tractor trailer, triples, doubles, whatever they can
That is,
get in off the
that is
highway.
definitely true. It's distribution of food products.
Yeah, so I think it would be primarily off of 64 there.
Mhm.
And what Katie brought up, I remember as well, that while the facility would be in Wildwood, we
Yeah.
think Chesterfield pay for the road.
It's just hard to tell is over there are drivers that they can't go down that road.
But I don't know, really, it's not a Wildwood road, so I think that's where we have a.
No big deal.
But I think that's so far early.
It's
That
so early,
I
yeah.
think there'll be a development zoning review meeting if that ever even gets to that point.
And that's a good point too, is if it gets to that point. Right now, it's just kind of, I would say, almost just kind of putting feelers out there for potential properties that would make sense, that have the square footage and have the topography to make sense, but in this case, we're still very, very.
Other questions for Mr. Lee from anyone else?
Thank you.
I've got a few questions for you. Is there a firm date yet for the opening of the Houston Bank facility?
Yes, so they plan to open, they have to get licensing from the state to operate as a financial institution to be able to accept cash at a drive up.
Okay,
They plan to have that in hand by January 2024, so their hope is to open no later than February 1st, but nothing set at this time, just because the state has to get back to them.
Mhm.
perfect.
And just a heads up too, they can't really promote until they get that as well, so that's why we haven't really inquired about ribbon cutting, all that good stuff yet.
All right, very good. Katie, did you have?
No, I was just looking at like,
SSM Health Physical Therapy, we had the ribbon cutting there a few weeks back. Any conversations with them since that time regarding traffic that they see coming in or anything of that sort?
Overall, I mean, we talked to them, we talked to Mr. Petrucci, I talked to Mr. Petrucci specifically, and he was very appreciative of the turnout. It was a very good turnout. That being said, I mean, it's more of a medical facility. They were taking clients from where their initial place was within CrossFit Wildwood. They've added 2 individuals and they're keeping 3 physical therapists busy around the clock from 9 to 5. So it seems like they're doing pretty good.
Good, thank you. Alloy Personal Training. Firm date on them opening
Firm
up? yet?
date, they attended last time I spoke with the gentleman that's running that business was with Coffee as the Mayor last week. And they said they plan to open in the coming weeks. They don't have a firm start date though.
Okay, all right.
They're
very
moved
good.
in though, and they're
Yeah.
working on getting.
They're
it
doing
done.
flyers. I've received 2 in the last 3 days.
They
Okay,
participated in our holiday tree lighting ceremony as well, getting promotional stuff
I
out.
wonder if they're possibly open now, because I took a look at their website and it showed hours of operation.
We received anything on about signage for them? They have not got a sign application.
Okay. Northeast, that we just talked about at length. What is the next step there?
So the next step, at this point, the Department of Administration, Department of Planning, and actually the Department of Public Works met with the potential Skinnell Properties and kind of laid out the process of what it would look like if shown interest, we would need, how that would play out. They took that information and I guess they're taking it back to their client. The next step, it would be they would re-engage with the city and then let us know, hey, we would like to get this moving formally, which then a DCRC meeting would be scheduled to hear the proposed initial, what it's gonna be. I mean, at that point, we'd have more info though, but Joe, I mean, I don't think at this time it seemed like they were really kind of doing a preliminary review of potential locations, with this one being one that would make sense for them. That being said, I think there is a lot of questions when it comes to which side of the road, I mean, not which direction they would be leaving. If it's only one to 64, then that would make a lot of sense, but we will see.
All right, thank you. Village Plaza Shopping Center, has there been a response back from MoDOT regarding trimming the bushes and so on back?
Yeah, so our area engineer did let us know that the new owner of the plaza had applied for a permit to clear that brush. It seems like they would be willing to allow that activity, but as for the city's request for them to pay for it, for the betterment of our city, they indicated pretty strongly that they would not be willing to pay for it. So at this time, it would be something that would be on the hands of the developer to clear that brush on their own dime.
Okay. Magnolia Soap and Bath, just a quick comment. I was in there last week, late in the week, and they seem to have continuous traffic all throughout the morning that I was there. I was there for about 20 minutes and there were a minimum of 2 to 3 people in there at any given point in time. And the 2 people that were managing the place seemed to be pretty busy. So nice to see.
It's actually, that's a kind of cool success story. Obviously, they just opened, but mother and a son are kind of running the operations in and out. And it's a franchise that has about 49 locations across the country, I believe. But getting one here in Wildwood's pretty cool. And, you know, if next time you see me personally upstairs, let me show you we have for the new resident packets. I gave them the idea of like, hey, give us some promotional material. And we share it with our new residents. And they got a cool idea to make these soap bars that have the Wildwood logo imprinted on one side, and it's in a little baggie that has the Magnolia Soap logo on it. So it was kind of a little tip of the cap to Wildwood, which we really appreciate, and it kind of adds some weight to our new resident packet. So if you're a new resident, be excited.
Wait,
Assume they're dirty.
physically and so.
And April Baker, the principal there, is in Ward 3.
Yes,
Ward.
yeah, she is.
On the end of your list here, you've got Capture Technologies and Emily's Photography, but did not make any particular comments. Anything you wanted to add there?
Nothing too out of the ordinary here. Those 2 businesses opened a little bit earlier in the year, so I wanted to include them. Just it's December, wanted to kind of give a recap on some of the more recent openings, but both of those businesses have been open for about Emily Lou Cars, I believe it was late August, September, that when they officially opened. And then Capture Technologies opened pretty early in October. But overall, both companies, especially, you know, you could see a lot of the activity moving into the Main Street building here we have that's brokered out by Intellica. So they've been doing a really nice job getting appropriate businesses looking at the center. So we're seeing the vacancy rate drop pretty significantly at pretty much one of our most prominent buildings right here in the center of town center.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Lee? All right, very good. Thank you for that update. We will move on then to an update on the Communications and Economic Development Manager position.
Yep, this is just a quick update. We are currently in the process of reviewing resumes for this position, and the hope is to start interviewing in January. So, and wanted to give another update that we've been kind of focusing. We do have an interview with a potential candidate for the arborist vegetation specialist position. We didn't want to have too many postings out there at once where we're scheduling interviews day after day and couldn't continue with normal operations. So looks like we're doing pretty good on the arborist vegetation specialist role. And now we can kind of gear our focus towards that communications role. So hope is to interview in January and then have a position filled by February of 2024.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lee on that topic?
Just one, how many applications have you received?
At this time, 0. It was just posted. Yeah, not too many yet, but at the next meeting, I can give an update on how many exactly we got, which I think this position specifically should garner quite a bit of attention. So I think we should get a good count.
Councilmember Dunkel.
When did you post it? Because I was out looking
It was posted today. It was
today.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you, because I was looking yesterday and I'm going, we were gonna have that out there.
It just came.
And it's out there now.
Yeah.
Psyche.
So Councilmember Dodwell and I were on the same wavelength and she asked the question that I was going to ask. So thank you. Seeing as there are no further questions then on that particular topic, we'll move on to ready for action. And first off is a review of the walking and biking benefits program. And I'd like to point out that we have Mr. Hugh Scher sitting over there on the other side of the room, who has been a strong supporter of this program and introduced this program to the city originally. And what we wanted to do here is, I think, and I'll turn things over to City Administrator Lee here in a minute, to just sort of update us on this program and why we're discussing it here tonight. City Administrator Lee.
Oh, I was actually, I heard that backwards. I was gonna say if Mr. Share, since he was kind enough to join us to kind of give us an update on
Perfect.
a
Let's
couple of
do
the
that.
items, and I can give a recap.
All right, sounds good.
Well, you see some of the actions taken on your sheet. In addition to that, we sent an email to all the subdivision trustees. However, unfortunately, I was a little bit late. And unfortunately, I got back several mail delivery errors. In thinking I had limited success and that list needs to be updated. I got a few responses back. Trustees are going to share it with their subdivision, and we asked them to, however they communicate with their residents, Facebook, newsletter, all the other variety of communication apps that are out there. So a few are doing it, but I think we had limited impact there. We have 11, I just checked on my phone here on the app, 11 businesses participating, technically participating. Unfortunately, we've lost several due to closure, so I think we're 14 or 15 at some time. That's essentially it. I agree with some of the relaunching ideas here. And in my opinion, I think we got a late start on some of the communications, and we missed a good part of the cycling season as it weather started to change. And so I would be on giving it another shot, doing some additional communications, trying to get some of the list updated, trying to reach out to some more businesses and plead for any help from the committee members here, council members that know businesses that would be appropriate for this. I've been targeting Benedito's for a long time. They got sick of seeing me knock on their doors, but I know they have new ownership. So connections like that would, a simple note introducing me so that when I go talk to them, I'm not just a person off the street asking for something else. And I know they're all inundated. They've had a tough several years here, especially trying to get employees. So I'll turn it over to city administrator Lee.
May I make a comment first? I understand your frustration, sending it out to some of the HOA associations and probably getting some bounce back on some of your emails and so on. Unfortunately, we are somewhat at their mercy in terms of them keeping their listing of trustees up to date. We do actually have a spotlight on the city's homepage asking the HOAs to keep their lists up to date, but I think at least what I'm going to do on my end, and maybe a suggestion for others here on the committee, is to take that and maybe send that out to some of the people you know who are trustees in various subdivisions, and maybe drive that point home a little bit more so that we can get an up-to-date listing of who the trustees are for the various subdivisions. But if you want to take your email and forward it to me, I'll be happy to send that out to some of those. I'll do it tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact.
You know, just to my last comment would be is when we researched this program for Wildwood, comments we received from other communities is that it's a great program, businesses like it. Communication is a challenge. Letting people know about it is a challenge. I think we've been moderately successful in reaching out to businesses, but we need this kind of convergence. You know, if we built something and we need people to come to it, so it's kind of this Venn diagram that we're working with, and we need to get that sweet spot in the middle.
Thank you. City Administrator.
Yeah, so to kind of echo some of Mr. Sharon, we appreciate Mr. Sharon being here tonight. Some of his sentiment. We did have just kind of go over some of the efforts. We did have we have a dedicated webpage right now that you can go visit. It has some information on the program. And Mr. Sheriff, if you'd like to, we can talk offline here to see if we can get an updated list so we can clean up the business list. The other thing is the spotlight. We did have a spotlight active for 6 months. The amount of spotlights we have on the homepage, we have, you know, a lot of things competing for it. So after 6 months, we try to give everything at least 6 months, unless it's one of our, you know, internet access or waste hauler transition, big things. Mr. Share was invited to come out to our citywide events. including the Tour de Wildwood, which was a really nice success here in Wildwood. And then during business visitations, I think this is a key piece, just kind of spreading the word through those hand-to-hand contacts with business owners and attending different ribbon cuttings and so forth. Couple things that we could do to kind of amp it up a little bit more if we want to solidify an approach would be to do a concerted social media push. I also think that a Gazette article dedicated to the biking and walking benefits program. Typically, we get, for any specific issue that's new to the Gazette, we get a couple calls after that, about a week and a half, 2 weeks after it's published. And if we include an article dedicated to this program, I believe it'll at least drum up support for 10 to 20 individuals, just because that's what we've seen in the past, for anything, so this is just one thing. It kind of seemed like it would new and exciting to the individuals that gain their media through our Gazette. But I wanted to hit on one point here, particularly, and I think this really would help the program, would be if the city of Wildwood had a bike shop or some kind of outdoor store, retail store. And, the department's been trying, calling a lot of, different vendors that might make a good fit. We've been selling them on the atmosphere here. We are a biking community. If we had a business that was dedicated to biking or just dedicated to hiking and biking, could be kind of a mix of two. The city partnering with that store as the primary, meeting ground, focal point for the program, I think would just be, would be a huge driver. And if it was located here in town center, right down the street here, with City Hall right here, I think that would, I think that would generate just, in itself, it would carry the weight of the program. So I do think that not having a dedicated bike shop here or a place that sells bicycles or repairs bicycles in Wildwood, they got to drive over to Ellisville, is one of the bigger hurdles, if you will, of drumming up support. Because if an individual is visiting a bike shop, they're going because they either need something for a bicycle, or they need a bike, or they need a bike for someone else. So they're generally interested in the idea of it. So that's something we'll continue to do. But at this time, we have not had any success.
Councilmember Dunn.
Can we maybe make that one of the goals of the new economic development manager, is to ferret out either a local company that currently has a bike shop in another part of the county coming out here, or a new type of venue?
Most definitely.
And those of you who are bikers, do you know anybody that wants to start a business?
Well, I was going to mention, some of the other committee members here may know who this gentleman is. I can't think of his name. He has come out to some of the West Chamber meetings from time to time, and I think he has a bike shop downtown. And he, at one point in time, was actually thinking of a bike shop out in this area. I don't know if anybody can think of who that person is. And I think that the bike shop was actually a side business. I think his main business was installing fiber optic cable, and he was a fiber optic contractor. Does that ring a bell with anybody here? Vaguely?
Rings a vague bell with
Yeah.
me. I remember
Okay.
hearing
All right.
somebody. I think.
The department could reach out to the
opening.
The department could reach out to the West County Chamber of Commerce to see if we can get that info though, and
Okay.
make contact with them. Because we've been reaching out more to the more regional. So if it's in the city, that could be a good extension.
Great, thank you.
I'll reach out to two that I know personally.
Okay.
Railhead,
Okay.
I know they're right there, but also Big Shark.
Councilmember Garrett.
I think it would be good to, like, whether it's you or whoever looks at it, because we also have a veterans program. And I think where I start to get confused is we start building out all these programs and kind of just leave them there and never come back to visit them. And so that's part of the reason why they're not successful. Because I don't know if anybody even knew we had a veterans program. And there's some businesses, some that are not on the list with the bike program. But when I look at the bike, walking and bicycle benefits program, I'm thinking that the person that is going to be the one that you're targeting is probably someone who may be riding their bike, maybe with their family, with their kids, to go get ice cream in the town center. Some of these businesses, I'm not sure riding my bike to Zix, what I'm gonna be bringing back from there. You know, like, or the veterinary hospital, because you have to bring your bike, I believe, right? Or do you have to,
Or walk.
you have to walk? So some of these, I'm not sure they would ever get traction, but like going out to eat would be it. I think right now the time of the year is difficult because it's very cold. But when I think of bicyclists in Wildwood, I think of those that are more for sport, that are out there and they're probably not stopping at businesses. They're riding our roads, our trails. And I don't know if they're intermixing, stopping at stores, doing things. I think it would be great at some point if Wildwood does become more walkable. More, you know, kind of cycling, you know, just instead of taking your car. It's just that I don't see that population yet significantly, especially outside of the town center. In the town center, you do have some people that will walk a little bit here or there, like when it's nice in the summertime, you see them walking to get ice cream. Don't typically see many people walking to Dearborns and coming home. And I think that's part of the challenge here. We just haven't evolved or matured as a community to get to that point there. You know, there's a big segment here in town center that's isolated because there is no main street that cuts through. So those people today really don't have a way to get into town center. So I think there's some obstacles there that probably get in the way of it. But I mean, I think as long as you're willing to put the energy to do that, and you're obviously doing that, trying to reach out with the HOAs, getting the word out, maybe a refresh campaign when the weather warms up.
Yeah,
Would be a good one.
I think your comment is spot on. When we launched the work program, we sent a note to every business. We didn't turn anybody away. Swix, he realizes exactly what you said. He said, okay, we can offer a bottle for the sports cycles that are flying down Clayton to go back to the city. He said, we'll have water. And that's similar with the veterinarian.
Actually, I'm so used to it, you know.
The real target would be coffee shops, restaurants. We have a limited number of those, so hopefully we're all bigger work. We have more of those in the near future. That's really what it's designed for. In grocery.
See us.
What about the guy who's putting all of the healthy things over by the old city hall? There's space over there, I mean, up and down the street there for different types of shops. I mean, if you found somebody who wanted a bicycle shop, you certainly have the building back there where Miller House used to be. And that's got upstairs, downstairs, but if people are in that area because of the CrossFit place and because of SSM, that seems to be the type of people who might be interested in just browsing around.
That does make sense. Mr. Petruso, though, and doesn't mean we can't reach out to those surrounding businesses. We can definitely do that. But he owns the building, the old City Hall building, but he doesn't actually own SSM Health, that branch, or JB Wellness.
Right.
So in that case, I mean, I haven't really necessarily seen if he has some of the bike shop connections, though. He might very well know someone that owns a bike shop, considering he owns a gym. So I can reach out to him to see what he might have.
Just an idea. I mean, it's hard because we're not really a walkable city.
The town center is walkable, but yeah, outside the
Yeah.
town center, it's.
Well, only
Yeah.
this right
Yep.
here in town center
But
at this point.
if I could add, I think really you would probably be more successful targeting walkers because you don't need a bike. And then when the weather warms up, like if I just didn't have top of mind, but if I knew going to Wildwood Pub and Grill was 10% off. I mean, I think you've got a whole community right there between the Meadows, Wildwood, West Ridge Oaks that they can easily save a few bucks just going out to eat, or Letty Lou's. That's a nice concentration of businesses right there. And Silver Spoon, there's definitely some there. I think that would be a good place to target that group there. I think the walkers, you know, probably more of those.
I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, so to Joe's point, when bikers are coming through Wildwood, I know I ride with the Monday morning group, and they take off from Trailhead, and we do about a 30-mile loop out through the city and then back up along Old Manchester. And they're coming through just south of town center here. They're not really stopping for anything in town center. They're just interested in getting back to trailhead, but a few times people have had issues with their bikes, and so they have to, you know, pull off to the side of the road or kind of limp back to trailhead. If there was some type of a bike shop, and I'm wondering if maybe it's maybe rather than being a full-fledged bike shop, maybe one of the bike shops would consider what I'll call sort of a storefront with some basic repair facilities there, you know, tires and some of the basics for, you know, fixing a bike up, and then maybe a few other things like, you know, the water bottles and the saddlebags and that sort of thing. So I don't know how that would go over with any of those bike shops, but
There is if you ride the Katy, the Bike Shop Cafe in St. Charles City it's not really bike focused. It doesn't really sell bikes. It sells accessories for bikes and it fixes bikes and it sells food.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the idea I've been trying to project here in town center is that, you know, you can make your money off the food. But also there is a biking community here that I guarantee would stop off
Yes.
while making those big cuts. So that has been one of the focus too, to kind of sell this either a full-on bike shop like a Momentum or something like that, or Big Shark, or have the more limited scale back, but add something that, because you can't just have we just fix bikes. If you can have it where you're selling food or some kind of maybe health drink or something like that with it, then you can help supply the revenue.
and I will attest to the quality of the food at the Bike Stop Cafe.
It's pretty good. I've tried it too.
But I digress.
They got a good sandwich.
All right, any other questions on this particular topic? Thank you for coming down. You're welcome to stay if you want to, but it might be kind of boring.
I would like to have the grocery store. My foot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
all
having
your
me.
support of this program
thank
and
you.
working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to approval of the 2024 business forum schedule. And I owe you an answer, and I'm good with either the
18th to the 24th, I believe, and can you tell me the next? Take a look. Oh, you can, sorry. I'm sorry, because I only put one on there, and I was gonna bring this up if you didn't, so I promise you. It was the 18th, 25th, or the 11th of January.
how about the 18th? Does that work for you?
Yep, 18th would work.
Okay,
That's what I had on here, so that, lucky guess for me.
It would, if we do hire a new person, it's kind of sad. That the new person wouldn't start probably until after we've
Until
had the
after
first
that
6,
meeting.
every 6-month meeting.
Yeah,
So I mean, you can't build around that. It's just that if you're just starting in January to hire somebody, then that person wouldn't be at the first meeting.
right.
well, that's a good point. I think the reason we chose to have a January meeting is we found last year the January meeting was the meeting that was the best attended.
Business is a little slower,
Yeah.
easier to get away.
Right.
Kind of everybody's getting back into the thing.
Yeah.
things, Yeah.
Yeah.
We had the,
Everybody's out of money. You
yeah.
can't go shopping.
Yeah.
So they come in here for the free donuts. No, sorry.
We did have an excellent turnout. What we found this year was that we did it on a quarterly basis, with a predictable schedule at, pretty much the first Thursday of the quarter. We had it, and we saw in, October and January specifically, it was the first meeting, so that could have contributed to some of the success, but a very large turnout. Secondly, October, we saw a pretty good jump back in after everyone's coming back from summer vacation. So the thought behind having on January 18th and September 12th is both of those dates, January 18th, you're coming back out of holiday season. September 12th, you're getting back into the swing of things for school. So business owners are, individuals are back from vacation season.
Yeah.
So that's the key there. So the hope is we generate as much traffic as we can for these two events. And, what we found was that the one in April and the one we held in July had only around 5, 6, 10 businesses, if I remember correctly. And overall, if we're gonna hold the event and get the I forget what those are called, bagels and whatnot, put out the coffee. We want to make sure we have a noteworthy event with a lot of input. And we just noticed that, it kind of cooled down during those heavy seasons, you know, with the spring break season being one and then summer vacations being the other. So this kind of surrounds the two, but still splits it up at a biannual rate. That being said, what I appreciate Mr. Marshall's sentiment here, because what we could potentially do if we were to get hire that individual by February, what if we could potentially then bring it back to the committee that we would have an intermittent meeting between then and September to introduce that individual. Maybe that's the formal coming out party of, hey, we just hired this individual. Nice to meet him and her, and the individual could then talk a little bit, tell them about themselves. I think that would tie in pretty nicely. But overall, the event, from the business owners I've spoken to, they really think it's refreshing. They like the opportunity to learn what's going on. A lot of them learn actual news from it too, because we were able to do a little presentation on the biking and walking program. We were able to do a Celebrate Wildwood, which we actually saw a nice little bump in sponsorships after that. So overall, it's a great event. It's a good way to connect with businesses. And one of the businesses that talked to me, he's the general manager of a large business here in Wildwood. He told me that he also attends Coffee with the Mayor on occasion. And he was like, he always was wanting something like that for the business community, which he said this successfully fulfilled. So overall, it's been met with a lot of good comments from the business community, especially since the Wildwood Business Association is kind of coming to an end here. It's nice to have that meeting ground here in Wildwood. So it's dedicated just to Wildwood.
And it's still at 7:30 in the morning.
It'll be at 7:30.
Very good. Any other comments on the economic forum?
I forgot to state that the department is requesting approval of this schedule from the commission. Sorry.
All right. Councilmember Dodwell,
I'll make said motion for approval.
seconded by Councilmember Partoni. Discussion.
Yeah, so we're just about a month away. What are we gonna present?
In the January one. So we will present this January. We'll have before Frozen Feet. We'll have a mentioning of Frozen Feet, just kind of city events, but we'll also be talking about probably do a special and new resident package, but typically we prepare that presentation 2 weeks in advance. So right now, I would say focusing on the upcoming events, we'll have a full event listing for what we're doing next year. Along with, well, I haven't really gotten that far yet.
Because we won't have another economic development meeting until after that. I'm just curious then.
Well, we do every time we have this meeting, we have kind of like what I'm hoping to have happen is increase engagement with the business community, have them come to our economic development committee meetings, and also have them come to council meetings to speak on behalf of the business community. So we do provide the next business date, next council date, the next EDC date, and any other big developments, like when Mr. Cohn had his development come in. He actually spoke to the crowd that came in. And then we actually ended up having individuals from that crowd come to city council to speak in support of the development. So it seems to be really, depending on some of the developments we've had, the business activity report, we could very well have one of them come in and speak to the business community about what that would mean for them. So it kind of plays it by ear, but I know we'll have a listing of all the events, ways to get involved with the Celebrate Wildwood event, and then thirdly, what our schedule is for events this year. So that's right now.
Great, thanks.
One topic that we might put back on the list is another recap of the changes to the temporary sign code. I think it would be fitting, especially if we get the turnout for the January meeting that we got last year, because I don't think we've gotten the message out completely. Well, I know we've made attempts, but we talked about it at the one business forum. I think there was something in the West News, if I'm not mistaken, but never hurts to tout that success story again.
Yeah, that's great. And I think honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to having it earmarked on every single one of them, because the sentiment we received from one of those meetings led to that change. So
Right.
we also probably will have an update on, this is something a little bit more concurrent, but we're talking about this wayfinding signage right now. And Mr. Vunich could speak to that a little bit more, but it kind of identifies the districts within the city and potentially could have signage on there. It wouldn't say, Deerberg or anything like that. It would say shopping plaza or restaurants, and would have an arrow pointing towards the area that you would want the individual to go to. So that on top of what we've currently done, temporary signage, I think gives a 1-2 punch to help address some of the visibility concerns we've heard from our business community.
Mr. Vunich.
please, I'll defer to.
Go ahead, go ahead.
One of the things that Mr. Lee and I have been talking about is kind of replicating what we did over at Schnucks Wildwood Crossing, where they had the large monument signs out in front along Manchester Road, and then allowed them to have certain tenants, those anchor tenants, also as part of the sign. We have instances like at Westridge Office Center, Wildwood Square, and one that really kind of drew it into focus, the new Spirit Bank. That monument sign can only be used by Spirit Bank. And it'd be a great location to be able to advertise Village Plaza and some of the larger businesses. So Mr. Lee and I have been talking about taking something to the commission and then city council to allow us to have a little more flexibility with those large signs and how they're used by the tenants that anchor those centers. That's a good idea.
And it wouldn't be, you know, like we wouldn't be changing anything like neon lights or anything like that. It would just be allow a little bit more flexibility on who's able to be on that that frontage. And I think, you know, especially for our anchors, I guarantee they would be thanking us for it.
And that's something we're looking at for either January or February of 2024.
And one thing I wanted to add on the January meeting that we did have, you kind of went over the current status of things in the city of Wildwood as far as businesses go as the initial overview, but you spent maybe 10-15 minutes on that. And then you opened it up to the audience to say, what do you have questions about? What kinds of things would you like to see added or changed? And so I think having that kind of dialogue might help in the initial one, plus it also reduces the amount of effort.
I think, I appreciate that sentiment, and I think, you know, with the chair's permission, maybe we could talk about having a more of an open discussion from the beginning, and then, you know, once the questions kind of die down, just kind of having a little casual presentation, but maybe if we just from the start, you know, hey, good morning, introduce ourselves, and maybe then we just say, you know, here are a couple things, we'll have it all on one, the covering slide, if you will, we'll cover, and then open it up for questions. You have any questions about this? But really, what did you come out here for? What did you come out here to learn? And then we can dive into some of it if it pertains to their questions. But then obviously, you know, my hope would be they have more questions at the beginning versus hearing my voice chatter for a good 30 minutes.
So, Councilmember Dodwell makes a good point. I think it was interesting when we had a couple of what I will call prominent members of the community come in and say a few words, like we had Mr. Cohn at one time, and then we had the gentleman from over at St. Louis Community College that stood up and said a few words. So I might challenge the city administrator to think of a prominent person in the community here that we could bring in to speak for a few minutes.
Maybe our very successful businessman from CrossFit.
I would actually already think of that.
Yeah, there you go. Good idea.
Yeah.
Another person might be our successful Big Chief Grill individual. People who have been here for a while in the city know what it's like working with the city itself and have still been able to become, I don't mean that in a negative factor, but still found a way to be successful in the various challenges it takes to start a new business in any way.
Yeah, I could add, and you know, maybe you could also bring in a new perspective. Like Mr. Kababi, he had reached out to me a while back, which is where he ended up bringing the bank in.
Yeah.
He actually believes a lot in Wildwood. He wanted to bring in another business a couple of years ago over at the Westridge office area. It was a kind of gymnastics place. They actually have the business, but it's in Ellisville. They wanted to come to Wildwood. So I know they explored that idea a couple of years ago. But when he reached out a couple months ago, I sent him to Tom and I said, talk to Tom about the location that he was thinking about. And he raved about the support from the city after I spoke with him just recently about, you know, obviously he's closed on it and he's
That's a
making
good
it
idea
possible.
too.
So that's a testimony of someone who just is now going through it. and someone who's been doing it for a
Yeah,
couple of
that's
years.
a good idea.
Maybe a little combo of both.
He could drive for, he'd run do for some business opportunities too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key
There's
there.
incentive on his part to do it.
Yeah. That first meeting, we did have a couple of business people that came in, just looking for leads, so to speak.
Well, that's maybe something we could talk about too,
Fine.
is that the makeup of the meeting, maybe there is a little, like a 15-minute allotment of time for more
Networking or.
networking and, you know, the thing is, if it's like the first meeting we had last year in January, a networking style format would be excellent. But when you get to a smaller crowd, you only can rub elbows with so many people before you're like, oh, I'm hitting the wall here. So I think if it's a big, maybe it's something we can maybe play by ear. If it's a
Yeah.
nice, huge turnout, we can.
So
okay,
you're
well,
probably, the invitation that you're gonna send to all the license holders, whatever. You could put on there, let us know what you know, do you have questions you'd like us to
put it
address?
together.
And you might get 1 out of 100. Something that you really don't want to talk about, but you have to take a shot at it, you know?
That can be done.
All right. There are no other.
So we do have the motion,
do
we
have
just
a
didn't
motion.
vote, because I was.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. We have
I
a
think we need
motion
to
on
vote
the
on that.
floor.
Yep.
Forgot. So, any further discussion on the motion, which has been motioned, or I should say made and seconded?
Discussion.
No discussion.
That's all right.
I was just gonna throw out, do we wanna make it later in January, so you might have an employee on board, but the chances of that are pretty slim, so never mind. I was just working through my
No, it's
mind
fine.
there.
It's good.
Just scary sometimes.
All
Being
right,
positive.
all those in favor of proceeding with the motion to approve the economic forum update on January the 18th. By saying
Aye.
Aye.
abstentions. Motion carries. That brings us to not ready for action, update to the economic development guide. Is there anything new here?
First task for our next economic development manager.
All right, very good. That brings us to miscellaneous. Are there any miscellaneous items? Councilman
Yes,
Garitano.
Yeah, I wanted to, I wasn't ready really to speak to it tonight, but I thought, you know, it might be good because we're starting a new year. But when I think of the business environment and the different types of business segments we have here, I think we're on the cusp of something, if not, we already are. An industry here in Wildwood that I don't believe gets the proper recognition. But when you think about these businesses that have recently opened, Wildwood Yoga and Wellness, Fox Company Yoga, Wren's Nest Wellness, Wildwood YMCA already here, Switch Wildwood, CrossFit, Against Gravity at Clayton and Strecker, Alloy Personal Training, Anytime Fitness, Premier Martial Arts. And then you have more of the medical side, the Wildwood Health and Wellness, Mercy, SSM Physical Therapy, 2 and 2 Degrees of Wellness. And even now, some of the food side of it, like Micro Meadows, where they're putting in a juice bar if they haven't already, J&B Wellness Cafe. We have a health and wellness industry, an ecosystem here in Wildwood that I don't think we're raving about. Some cities rave about the number of fast food places. We should be raving about all these good businesses that are local that, you know, can really, already people see it because there's the demand, the businesses are coming here. We hope that people are doing their research and they're looking at it. But why not, I think if we look at 2024, amplify that message even more to make Wildwood be known as a place for health and wellness. We already have our parks and trails, we're known for that. This complements it beautifully. And there isn't anywhere yet that I think we've ever done or said anything about this health and wellness, right? We did what was it, I can't think of it, the landscaping fair, what do we call that? That we
With
did.
the Lawn Garden Southern.
Lawn and Garden, and there was like just a small handful of Lawn and Garden. A health and wellness type of event, or a spotlight these businesses would love it. And this proves that the competition is a good thing.
Mm.
right? Because that's how I see it when you go down the road. You have restaurants, fast food places, doesn't hurt. It actually brings more people in. This obviously is working. I don't know that we're taking advantage of making something out of it. And I think that would be good if we looked at 2024. If we don't have an idea.
Do something like that. in Town center, similar to what we did with the landscaping activities, say in the late April, early May timeframe, before summer hits, before the kids are back home and parents are trying to figure out something to do with the kids. Then we could have a section, a booth with, here's all of Wildwood's parks, another booth with each of these different companies could have their own booths to talk about what kinds of services they provide. And then the other thing I was thinking of is some of those that are food sources already, making sure that as we have events for the city, because we have a lot of hiking and walking events, seeing if we could get just one or two of them to show up at the event with their banner and their slushy or their ice cream or whatever it is that they're selling. So that when the event ends, we do a great job of doing a setup to start the event, but if we had an ending for the event so that they could taste some of their wares after they've worked out or done whatever they've done. I'm just throwing.
Or even a little chiropractor adjustment after the race or something. But I think there is the potential. We just don't, we're not highlighting it.
Mhm,
My biggest fear is we're onto something
mhm.
that, I just realized it recently. I was like, wow, look at all these health and wellness businesses that have been popping up under our noses out of nowhere.
Mhm.
I wonder, do they work together or do they compete against each other?
Well, it depends
Either
on,
way.
it depends on what they're distributing or
Yeah,
selling.
but I mean, if they're looking to get a subscription type person to come in and try it, then are they taking business from one another? Or do they work and do some kind of a package where it go to either one or do whatever you want?
No, I think people pick where they want to go.
Probably each one of them thinks they're better than the other one anyway, for some
Yeah.
reason.
You got that health and
Competition
wellness
is
fair that
good.
you're talking about. I think it would end up being sort of like you see with the car dealers where they're all right next to each
Right.
other because they generate traffic for each other.
They bring people in, they create competition,
Which
which at the end of the day,
That's what you want.
they're drawing people in. I mean, it's probably working out and I think there's a good opportunity, like combination of whether it's a fair or maybe we do a real focus campaign for a couple of months where we're highlighting it in our newsletters and, there's maybe some advertising or something,
This
but
could be the new
but I
business.
think it's a thriving industry that I'd like to see it succeed because I know we've got that going. I mean, right now, that's big.
What I might, if you don't mind, what I might suggest is if we, what I'm thinking here, what we already have a lot of participation from some of these businesses. We kind of did this a little bit with more home businesses, but we could piggyback off the attendance like we did with the home-based business exposition with a health and fitness expo, if you will,
Mhm.
and just to highlight, because we already will have some of our local vendors. We already have the infrastructure for it. We got the promotional materials and we get a solid turnout each time. This time we could just separate the crowd a little bit and have each person, each of the businesses we'd like to recognize, invite them personally to set up a stand there to show how they're contributing to the new healthy and fit Wildwood.
It's a health and wellness Wildwood economy we have. And it might be even tied into if we have some kind of run or race or, there was a new one that just took place over Thanksgiving, the turkey trot. And I think that was was that a homegrown type of?
That was an individual that
An
was,
individual and they did it and we had a big turnout over here. So I think we may as well run with something that's working out good there.
Could we get Monarch to have their paramedics come up here with a fire truck and be up here during the event? Because that would get all of the kids to tell their mothers and dads they want to come over to the event.
they want to sit in.
To Metro West, Monarch wouldn't like coming into their territory.
Yeah. Metro West, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'd like to throw out there, it's always been something that I thought we should do. Because you see it sometimes in other cities, they'll have like a restaurant week. Where you can coordinate with all the local restaurants where they have a special for that week or a certain day. And, I envision, that springtime when it's patio season and people are sitting out, there's more tables for them to serve. But if we do a targeted campaign to promote local Wildwood restaurants, we've got a number of them. I think the reason I bring it up is we have to start that in the coming new year, because by the time that, you probably want to make that be live like in May or June. While the weather's still nice and they can sit outside. You gotta start thinking about it at the beginning of the year.
I think it's an excellent idea. I will say we could promote it as like, restaurant week.
Wildwood
But-
Restaurant Week.
But if we
Gotta think
we
Wild-
could not specifically state though, on Tuesday, go to
Well, then,
Benedetto. So restaurant week and then they fill it in the gaps, that can be done. But we cannot promote a specific business over another.
so just make it Wildwood and then encourage the restaurant businesses.
Get
to
on
have a
social.
special that week, that maybe we could promote, these businesses will having special get the Wildwood special this week, go visit them. And it would help encourage people, especially in that beginning of the patio season, to get out, try something that they haven't tried in Wildwood. Explore some
So
new
maybe if
businesses.
you wanted to tease people to come to your January meeting, do a separate blip in there for restaurants and do a separate blip in there for health and wellness. Say, we're looking for your suggestions and see if somebody comes and says, hey, I think that would be a good thing for us to try.
Just ideas, I'm just throwing them out there.
I mean,
but
I
they've been on
think that's
my
a great way
mind.
to get-
I've had them in the file, I just haven't.
I just think it's a great way to get people to come and talk about their things that might work, because they've got the ideas, they got everything invested in it. We just have to.
And I bet you after the first year we do Wildwood, all of a sudden you'll see other restaurant weeks in other cities.
Well, Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah, Maplewood does one,
Mhm.
Kirkwood does one, yeah, it's.
It's so tough for those people, though. They can't get help and they have to shut down so many days a week. It's hard to be in business.
All right.
I can't believe people are not making their teenagers work.
As parents and work high school and college.
Yeah,
They're the only kids who have
Yeah.
family had to work. I heard.
that's what I heard too, yeah.
Can't believe it.
Any other items under miscellaneous?
I wanted to say this yesterday, but to Joe and Thomas, the tree lighting thing was fantastic. Like you guys did a great job. I don't think you really got mentioned yesterday much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
I gotta give a little credit to our superintendent of parks and Stacy, our recreation specialist too. They did a really good job getting everybody engaged on that. It was really.
I was just betting between Travis and Joe, somebody was gonna get electrocuted over there. It reminded me of that show where they're like trying to light them together.
I know.
Hey, there was no issues with the lighting this year.
Did your staff have a good time putting it together?
Yeah, I mean, obviously getting any event together, it takes time, effort,
Yeah.
tears, sweat, all that good stuff. But that being said, I think for me, I think that's one of the coolest events I think Wildwood has, just because it does kind of, and I hear this from a lot of residents and, I think it's something to build off of, but you get a Hallmark vibe
Yeah,
whenever
you
you're
do.
at
That
that
my
event.
wife calls it a homework.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the word
It's the
probably
same-
used most.
It's the
Hallmark.
same
Yeah.
thing at the summer concerts when I'm
and
talking to
being
people, they say. the
40
same thing.
degrees instead of
That
15.
was
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
If Santa can control the
If
weather
you can
for us.
continue doing that, you will continue to have success.
I did ask, when I visited Hidden Valley one year, they had something, I said to them, I said, any chance you could bring your snowmaking equipment to the town center? For that reason.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
They
that's
said,
pretty
no, it's not cold enough when you want it.
No.
If it were, you probably didn't want it.
Yeah.
All right, next meeting is,
Just motion to adjourn.
okay, well, before we do that, next meeting is January 30th, 2024 at 6 P.M. Now we'll entertain that motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
From Councilmember Bartoni, non-debatable. All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. now I'm gonna go home and do my,
Yeah, Merry Christmas.